People still don't know the real reason. Maybe it's time I told them.
You heard that right. Michael Jordan isn't just reminiscing. He's exposing the truth behind one of the nastiest rivalries in NBA history. And today, I'm unpacking the full story of why MJ never liked Isiah Thomas. It started with the brutal playoff wars that left Jordan battered on the floor. Then came the infamous walk-off that froze their relationship forever. Add to that the Dream Team snub, a moment that still haunts Thomas to this day. And if you think this was just about hard fouls, wait until you see how Jordan used his power to shut Thomas out of one of the biggest opportunities of his life. Trust me, this goes way deeper than you think. To really understand why Michael Jordan never liked Isiah Thomas, you can't start with handshakes or Dream Team drama. No, you start with violence. You have to go back to the late 80s playoffs. Jordan was flying down the lane, about to pull off one of those hang-in-the-air finishes that made him, well, Jordan. Then, bam. Bill lame beer threw his shoulder into Jordan's chest like he was tackling him in the NFL. Jordan hit the floor hard. The crowd gasped. But the Detroit bench? They were loving it. And here's the thing. This wasn't random. This was what they called the Jordan rules. They weren't just trying to guard Jordan. They wanted to break him. Mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it took. And here's where Isiah Thomas comes in. He wasn't just a bystander while his enforcers went wild. He was the face of that Pistons squad, the scrappy hometown kid from Chicago who had turned into the general of the Bad Boys. To him, those hits weren't dirty. They were strategy. Oh, don't take my word for it. Just check this out.
Every time you go to the fucking basket, put him on the ground. When he comes to the basket, he ain't gonna dunk. We're gonna hit you, and you're gonna be on the ground. Jordan is still there. We tried to physically hurt Michael.
Oh yeah, take out his right hand. It was that bad. Now, contrast that with MJ. Jordan was the rising superstar, the NBA's golden ticket after Magic and Bird. His whole game was built on style and dominance. He wasn't just trying to win, he wanted to embarrass you and then dunk on your center for good measure. So imagine how he felt when every trip to the rim turned into a wrestling match. The league was hyping Jordan as the future, while Detroit was treating him like a crash test dummy. And standing right in the middle of it all was Isiah Thomas, the guy smiling as his teammates dropped elbows. That's where the resentment started to boil. Because this wasn't just about fouls, it was about who was on top. Jordan saw himself as the chosen heir to the NBA throne, the man who would take basketball global. Thomas, on the other hand, saw himself as the overlooked underdog who had already built something special in Detroit, only to have the league's spotlight stolen by this new, flashy superstar. And year after year, those playoff battles became the real test. Because what came next wasn't just basketball, it was war. A war that stretched across years, and became the defining obstacle of Michael Jordan's rise.
Well, I think the crowd is cheering here for the Bulls right now, and the Pistons as they leave the court.
I don't think they're cheering for the Bulls, but I think the greeting is for the Pistons as they are headed off.
By the late 80s, the Pistons had already carved out their identity. They weren't called the Bad Boys because it sounded cool. They earned that name every single night with elbows, shoves, and an intimidating style of play that made opponents think twice before stepping into the lane. And no one took more punishment than Michael Jordan. Go back to 1988, when Chicago and Detroit met in the Eastern Conference semifinals. That series, Jordan was putting up unreal numbers, averaging 36, 3 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists per game. But even with those stats, the Bulls quickly realized what they were up against. Detroit's defense swarmed him. Their approach was simple. Hit him until we can stop him. And they weren't kidding about that. In fact, in a later interview, Dennis Rodman openly admitted it.
He shook my hand when he won, but when I did the sweeping, he disappeared like a coward.
By 1989, the rivalry had crossed the line from competition to pure hostility. Chicago wasn't the same upstart squad anymore. Jordan now had Scottie Pippen growing into a star, Horace Grant adding strength inside, and the Bulls finally looked ready to snatch the Eastern Conference crown from Detroit. The Eastern Conference Finals that year stretched to 7 games, and in the middle of it, Jordan delivered one of his most vicious performances. In Game 3, he went nuclear, dropping 46 points on Detroit. He sliced through double teams, attacked the rim fearlessly, and nailed mid-range jumpers that sent the Chicago crowd into a frenzy. The Bulls stole that game 99-97, and for a brief moment, it felt like the balance of power was finally shifting. But the Pistons had something darker. Asterisk the Jordan rules. Asterisk that 1989 series turned into a war zone. Every time Jordan flew into the lane, Laimbeer was waiting like a bouncer with a forearm, and Rodman was there to grab him out of the air. Every possession was punishment. And when it came down to the deciding Game 7, fate twisted the knife once again. Scottie Pippen was crippled by a migraine, shooting just 1, 4, 10 and barely able to see the basket. Jordan fought through swarms of defenders, but the Pistons overwhelmed the Bulls 93-74. Detroit marched on, and Jordan left humiliated. And if you think Detroit felt any sympathy, think again. Thomas and his crew brushed it off as toughness, just part of the job. To them, Chicago wasn't unlucky, they were soft. Then came 1990, another Eastern Conference Finals, another shot at revenge. By now, Jordan wasn't hiding his disgust, but the Pistons didn't care. He still went off, averaging 32 points per game for the series. But this wasn't one man against 5, it was one man against an entire system. Jordan kept fighting, but Detroit's defense wore him down like body shots in a heavyweight fight. Game 7. Same ending. The Pistons closed it out again and punched another ticket to the finals. By then, the story of the East was written in blood, and Detroit were the gatekeepers. To make matters worse, the Celtics dynasty was fading, the Lakers were aging, and the Pistons had claimed the throne by dragging every opponent through the mud. Everyone, Jordan included, knew the price of admission. So by the time 1991 rolled around, this wasn't just another rematch. It was the fourth act of a grudge match fueled by pain, humiliation, and payback. And this is where things get crazy. Because when Chicago finally flipped the script, Detroit didn't just lose, they embarrassed themselves. By 1991, the Bulls weren't just knocking on the door, they kicked it down. Chicago didn't just beat the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. They swept them, for games straight. No more migraines, no more excuses, and no more Jordan rules. This time, it was the Bulls who were physical, relentless, and hungry. The Pistons looked old, tired, and out of answers. Game after game, Jordan carved them up, averaging nearly 30 points a night. But it wasn't just the scoring, it was the control. Every time Detroit tried to rough him up, he bounced back. Every time they collapsed on him, he found Pippen or Grant cutting to the rim. By the time Game 4 hit, the Pistons weren't just losing, they were broken. And then came the moment.
Yeah, you can show me anything you want. There's no way you can convince me he wasn't an asshole.
With seconds still left on the clock, Isiah Thomas stood up from the bench, gave a quick nod, and led his teammates straight off the court. No handshakes, no congratulations, no eye contact, just a silent retreat to the locker room. Bill Laimbeer followed right behind him. Dennis Rodman, too. The whole crew ghosted the Bulls, walking away in the middle of Chicago's biggest win yet. And if you thought beating the Pistons was the peak, think again, because this was the moment everything boiled over. Jordan didn't just see bad sportsmanship that night. He saw betrayal. And if you know Michael Jordan, you know exactly what that kind of disrespect does to his ego.
It was okay when Larry Bird exited. We never looked back and said, oh, they were poor sports, they were bad champions. We were actually grateful of the lessons that they had taught us along the way in terms of how to win.
Rivalries are supposed to be ugly, but this was different. Walking off the court without shaking hands wasn't just poor sportsmanship. It was the ultimate sign of disrespect, both in basketball and in sports as a whole. And everyone in that arena knew it. The cameras caught Jordan's reaction instantly. At first, he looked stunned. Then you could see the anger start to boil beneath the surface. The Pistons had spent 3 years beating him down, and now that he'd finally conquered them, they couldn't even give him the basic respect of a handshake. Years later, in The Last Dance, Jordan still wasn't over it. You could see it in his face when that footage played. He didn't hold back. He flat out called Isiah Thomas an on camera. And this wasn't in 1991, in the heat of the battle. This was in 2020, almost 30 years later. That's how deep the scar went. Here's the thing. Isiah Thomas tried to justify it afterward. He said it wasn't a big deal because the Celtics had once walked off on Detroit the same way. But to Jordan, that excuse didn't matter. The respect had already been broken, and the damage was permanent.
They called me to ask me to play. Rob phone called and said, Rob, I won't play with Isiah Thomas on the team. He assured me, he said, you know what? Chuck that one, Isiah. So Isiah's not going to be a part of the team.
But let's be real. This wasn't tradition. This was bitterness. That single gesture froze their relationship in place. Jordan would go on to win titles, gain global fame, and claim the throne of basketball. But when it came to Isiah Thomas, the respect was gone forever. No matter how many times they crossed paths later, that walk-off always lingered, sitting in the middle like an open wound. And if that handshake snub seemed petty, wait until you hear what happened with the Dream Team. In 1992, the United States assembled what is still considered the greatest basketball squad ever, the Dream Team. It featured Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, John Stockton, and Patrick Ewing, basically basketball's version of the Avengers. They didn't just win gold in Barcelona. They turned basketball into a global phenomenon. Every kid outside the U.S. who fell in love with the NBA in the 90s probably started with that team. Now, here's where it gets messy. On paper, there was one name that should have been a lock: Isiah Thomas. Come on, the man had 2 rings, multiple All-Star selections, and a Finals MVP. Plus, he was the leader of the only team that had actually knocked Jordan off his throne in his prime. By his resume alone, he deserved to be there as much as anyone. But when the final roster dropped, Thomas's name was nowhere to be found. To put it in perspective, John Stockton made it. Clyde Drexler made it. Even Christian Leitner, still in college at the time, made it. But Thomas? He was left at home, watching from the couch. 4 years, the rumors were the same. Michael Jordan was behind it.
I hated him. And yeah, he carries even to this day.